Hello and welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we'll talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our political and national landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, parties threaten to boycott 2027 elections over Electoral Act. Also, EFCC puts 100 senior Nigerian lawyers on trial for fraud. And later in the show, Daniel Bwala's big mistake. We'll talk about that as a features on Mehdi Hassan's show on Al Jazeera. We'll have, in the course of the program, we take your questions, but first subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your questions in the comment section. It's important to mention that we can only read comments with human names and the ones based on the subject matter. I have joining me Vazum, the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Good to see you, BKO.
Good to do this with you, Ibrahim, and with our numerous fans.
Let me start from the basics. With Nigeria already looking ahead of the 2027 general election, tensions are rising around the newly enacted Electoral Act 2026. The Interparty Advisory Council, representing registered political parties, has warned that some provisions of the law may undermine internal party democracy and could lead to a boycott of the elections if amendments are not made. How serious is this threat in practical political terms, Bikil?
Yes, they still feel very bad about the Electoral Act Amendment 2026. They are echoing the sentiment expressed by the ADC the other day when it said that the Electoral Act should be withdrawn and amended a second time. Sometimes this happens. If you recall, the Nel Fund bill was after the president gave his assent, it was sent back. Some changes were made to make it possible for more students to be able to access the loans without issues. For example, the matter of guarantor was removed from the stipulations put in that bill, so that more students will be able to access it without fail. So, as far as these politicians are concerned, the Electoral Act 2022, as amended, needs to be looked at a second time. And what they are saying is really not different to what other opposition elements have been saying, that the amendment, the provisions, rather than deepen democracy, will in fact erode democracy. And they have political parties under their umbrella. They are saying that those political parties will be forced to boycott the election if the Electoral Act, as amended and signed into law by the president just some weeks back, is not withdrawn for the concerns that have been raised about it to be addressed. So they believe that the act has not improved the previous law, but has diminished it. And they are saying several provisions in there will actually undermine democracy and weaken the confidence of the Nigerian people in the electoral system. For example, they faulted the removal of mandatory electronic transmission of results. At the time when this particular portion was recalibrated to give room for manual transmission in case there is network failure, in case technology fails. Many of the opposition elements had expected that it will simply be made mandatory for the electoral officers to transmit results real time electronically. But in the wisdom of the National Assembly, there are many places in our country where you cannot guarantee real-time transmission of results as filled into Form EC8A, which is the valid result sheet on which results are collated. Another thing that they are worried about is the provision that political parties should register their members, and members registering as members of a political party should upload their NIN along with the registration to IPAC and the political parties that are threatening a boycott of this election or the impending election. The stipulation that their NIN should be uploaded would disenfranchise many people, since, as far as they are concerned, it is not everyone who has the NIN, National Identity Number. But we have to look at this issue dispassionately. Many people complain that some of the people who come to vote in our elections are not even Nigerians. They say that Nigerians come to vote in our country, Chadians come to vote in our country. In short, our West African neighbors, they come into our country sponsored by politicians to come and vote during our elections. So every Nigerian should have the NIN. I don't think political parties should be pushing that people should be registered as political party members without NIN. The stipulations also show that you put your phone number as well as your house address. So I believe that this whole idea is to ensure that only Nigerians who can be traced can register as members of political parties and, by extension, take part in our elections. So I don't buy the idea of saying that people will be disenfranchised if parties are made or forced to register, to have their members upload their NIN before their registration can be valid. Apart from that, they are also unhappy about Section 84, subsection 2 of the law, which removes the option of indirect primaries for political parties. We've talked about this a number of times, but it is also one of the clauses cited by the IPAC, which is an umbrella body for political parties in our country. IPAC plays a big role in ensuring that elections go on in our country with party members, with voters properly mobilized, and the elections take place in a peaceful atmosphere. They always have meetings. They always do press conferences trying to mobilize people to come out and vote, but they should conduct themselves in a peaceful manner. They always extract commitment from political players that they will take part in the elections without necessarily getting violent. So they believe that the indirect primary option that was removed should be brought back. The indirect primary option, yes, many people say it's fraught with corruption because delegates get paid tons of cash to represent their constituencies and pick candidates. But the indirect primary option is certainly even going to be more expensive than the indirect primary option, because more people will take part now, since every valid member of a political party in that constituency would be able to vote in the election. It puts power in the hands of the ordinary voter, unlike indirect primaries where only a handful of people actually represent others. And the argument of the National Assembly is that even in the US, it is a direct primary module that is used. Since we are copying this presidential system from the US, we have copied it from the US, they believe that there's nothing wrong in having our candidates chosen through the direct primary route. You and I know that mobilizing such people will cost more money because nearly everybody will want to come out and take part in choosing their candidates for the election. So if you look at what they are saying, what IPAC is saying, is not entirely different from what the opposition had been saying before now. And they believe that some of these provisions were inserted into the Electoral Act to favor the All Progressive Congress. If you look at even the time ceiling that is given for political party candidates to emerge, it is clear that parties like ADC, who are still relatively new after the acquisition by Atiku and his people, it will be difficult to meet the time ceiling that INEC has come up with for candidates, for primaries to take place, for congresses to take place, for primaries to take place, and for candidates to emerge. For a party that is already well entrenched and organized like the APC, will not find that difficult at all. So that is the situation. I think that if invariably they boycott the election, as they are threatening to do, it will be a big dent on the conduct of the election. I'm sure this is not what the new INEC chairman wants to see. He wants to see the election go according to plan, with as many voters as possible taking part in the election. Right. But if some parties opt out of the election, it also means that even the turnout will be much lower than we've seen in recent years, because there won't be any motivation for some categories of voters to go and vote when their party has decided to not take part in the election. It is not good for democracy, and I just wish that that doesn't happen.
Right. But then beyond the party threatening boycotts ahead of the 2027 election, if they actually follow through with the boycott threat, what would the legal and constitutional what would be rather the legal and constitutional implications for the Independent National Electoral Commission?
Well, I it's for me, this whole thing depends on the magnitude of boycott. If the major political parties do not boycott the election, I think that it won't massively detract from the conduct of the election. But if the major parties decide to stay away, which I do not expect to happen, then the impact of the lesser parties boycotting will not be tremendous on the will not have a tremendous effect on the election itself. So we just need to keep our fingers crossed. Let us see whether the dominant parties, like the Labour Party, like the PDP, like the ADC, let's see whether they will, or APGA, let's see whether they will boycott the election. But if major parties stick with the election in spite of their reservations, then INEC will be happy, and no one will be able to say what we had was a joke of an election.
Yeah.
So I believe that the scale of the boycotts is what will determine how the international community sees the election and the final analysis.
Right. Chinedu Okafor says, if political parties boycott elections because of the Electoral Act, then the real losers will be Nigerians. Democracy only works when everyone participates. Aisha Bello says, honestly, some of these parties just want laws that favor them. When the rules change, suddenly they start threatening boycotts. Nigerians are tired. Kunle Adeyemi says the issue of removing indirect primaries is serious, though. Parties should have the freedom to decide how they select their candidates. And Fatima Sadiq says, before anyone talks about boycotting elections, can we talk about how many Nigerians still don't even have name? That part of the law is worrying. Ibrahim Musa says, this feels like political bargaining to me. Once negotiations happen with the National Assembly, watch how the boycott talk disappears. And lastly, Ngozi Nwankwo says, every election cycle in Nigeria comes with drama. Electoral reform is good, but politicians should stop playing games with democracy. All right, then let's move on to the our second conversation.